I did not see animals the way I see them now. It was very different because coming from an Islamic country, and we should never judge people where they're coming from.
Hello and welcome to Critters and Cultures, the podcast where we explore the fascinating intersection of animal welfare and cultural diversity. I'm your host and veterinarian, Dr. Azalia Boyd, ready to uncover how cultural differences influence, enhance, and sometimes challenge the way we care for animals and relate to each other. Join us on this journey through global traditions, learning from diverse perspectives, and advocating for empathy and respect in all of our interactions. If something resonates with you during the podcast, please feel free to send me a direct message, comment below, or join our Critter and Culture Circle. Today, we have another remarkable, amazing guest joining us. A multifaceted advocate and leader in animal welfare and environmental rights and human rights, all from a deeply rooted Islamic perspective. Joining us from Pakistan, Altamush Saeed. Welcome. His journey is a fascinating blend of law and activism and filmmaking, with his work ranging from organizing Pakistan's first animal and environmental rights conference to creating documentaries. His work challenges stereotypes and misconceptions about Pakistan, Islam, and animal rights, while also bridging gaps between global issues and local cultural practices. So we'll be diving into his personal journey, the landscape of animal rights in Pakistan, and what drives his unwavering commitment to justice for all beings. Altamush Saeed, welcome to Critters and Cultures. We are so excited to have you here today.
Likewise, Dr. Azalia, thank you so much for creating this safe space, firstly, and for, considering those voices that are almost always not given that platform to, share their experiences. And as a result, a lot of other people are not able to share their experiences as well. So I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
You are amazing. You're doing lots and lots of good work, and I appreciate that as well. It's been a blessing for me, actually, learning more about everyone from around the world. And in that, I'm actually learning a lot about myself. So I also appreciate it. But before we dive into your amazing work and your journey, I am going to ask you an icebreaker question, okay? Because I want the audience to get to know, who is Altamush? Who is this guy? How is he so amazing? So I'm going to ask you an icebreaker question. And the question is, if you could be any animal for a day and experience life through their eyes, what animal would you choose and why?
What animal would I choose and why? Okay, that's a wonderful question. I think I have quite a few answers, but I will actually pick one that's almost always, kind of ignored. And I think I would probably try to be an insect. Probably a cicada or something. And the reason for that, firstly, is that, we don't often think about them even as animals. That's my first thinking. But the other thing is, they have a very different kind of a way they see the world. I have no idea, actually. But if you think about flies or these all small animals, I think they have at least 1,000 eyes. I'm pretty sure. Quite a few of them have it. So the way they see the world is, going to be very different. And for them, perhaps even a leaf might be something bigger than our biggest houses we could, ever have. So I think they might see the world from this abundance perspective that, everything is so big and everything so amazing. Of course, they've seen worse than, most of us because of their size. They're not considered these beautiful sentient beings. But I think it's not about the size of your body, but the size of your heart. And I think they have a very big heart, and we should, think about these other species as well. So for me, it would be an insect, actually, for these reasons.
Oh my goodness. If that did not give the audience an idea immediately of the way you think and your compassion for animals, not just the typical animals that we think about, cats and dogs. So that is beautiful. And I thank you. And I cannot wait to dive into your story. So tell me a little bit about you. I did kind of give a good intro, but tell me more about your work. What is life for you like now? And what does your work look like?
My work. Well, I think it's my passion more than my work because it started out when I was really young. I'm 29 right now, but when I started all of this, I think I was perhaps 14 maybe or 17, something in the middle there. So when I started out, I didn't even know what I was doing. And I think we had this conversation before, but I think it was all about empathy and having that space or the mindset to see the good despite everything. So the first thing I ever did in my life when I was 14 was actually eradicate drug abuse in my community. So it was was rampant where I lived, and a lot of my friends were, starting to pick up on it. So what we did was in 2012, and this is, 12 years ago, we started a football or a soccer tournament. You can use any term you want, but this is how a kid thinks, that's how they think. So we started this soccer tournament and we used to have it every year. And by 2017, it took us 5 years. Every single kid in my community was playing football or soccer. And I learned about that in 2017 somewhere that, I was a part of this beautiful thing. And eventually, right afterwards, and this is because Pakistan is quite different than how we see the world. So we have a very human centric mindset. And that's mostly because of our economics or poverty and other things, but that's how we normally see. So someone, who has the greatest heart, that's all they can see. It's not their fault. It's just their lived experience. And we should never judge people where they're coming from, the way they see the world, whether it's abundance or whether we're not seeing the resources, just like the insect or versus the dog, who is always about, sniffing his nose and seeing the world. I'm sure you know this, but a dog sees from its nose, not its eyes. And I don't know a lot of people would get that. That's eventually how it started out, and we were focused mostly on human beings. And that was for a very long amount of time. And that's also when I started my own nonprofit as well, Charity Doings Foundation, which I serve as a founder and co-director of. And now we work through it across the country on humans, animals, and environmental rights. So in 2018, I was rescued by a cat. I'm not sure if you've heard the story, but it's getting famous. So in
Hold on a
2018,
second. Wait a minute. You said you were rescued by a cat. First, I want to just bring out and highlight the fact that you and your friends as youth started playing games and having fun with a ball, right?
Yeah.
And just how much joy and how much safety you guys must have felt in those moments. So congratulations for that. And then it sounds like that extended out of the soccer field, right, to environmental rights and animal rights. So tell me more about this cat who rescued you.
So I know everybody gets shocked. How is that possible? So she was the one who mentally rescued me, and while I was the one who physically rescued her. So there's two different dimensions. So she came into our home in 2018, and at that point we just loved her, but we didn't know anything about how to take care of cats. So she went out and came back pregnant, and she gave birth to over 5 to 6 babies, and that's because I didn't know what spay neuter meant at that point. So now all of them, they live with us. It's been almost 6 years, and we have more cats in our house than people. So this cat named Mao, she is actually my greatest non-human mentor. And she's right inside in the room with me, but she's sleeping. So I'm not going to wake her up. But she is my greatest source of inspiration when it comes to animal rights. Everything I've done is because of her. Because right after we had her, I started joining protests. And that's the only thing I thought of. But eventually one thing led to another. At that point, I was also going through law school. So I felt I should file a case against animal prison camps. And I'll just be very honest in how I see the world. So I think zoos are prison camps. So we filed a case against them, and we actually won. We were able to convince the zoo we wanted them to shut down, but there was a government involved and they compromised on making the facility much, much better, which they did. And now I'm thinking what to do next. But some things happened, and that's when animal rights became a very big part of my life.
So animal prison camps, you're equating those are exactly zoos, right? And so paint me a picture of what zoos look like in Pakistan.
I think it's the same thing. It's the same concept across the world. It's just animals in prison bars. And I think normally we don't get that perspective whenever we go there. It's just like, a vacation site and we're having fun. But if you think from the animal's eyes, you will see a very different world. And I'm not asking you to, go and shut everything down, but think about it. Because the day we empathize with animals, that's the day we try to see the world from their eyes and not ours. And so that happened. And I was going through law school. I graduated. Unfortunately, at that point, COVID-19 also happened. So while that was happening, we started a very small campaign to help animals. We were doing something massively for humans because that's what we normally do. So we started a small campaign for companion animals because they were reliant on restaurant food and leftovers, which was, closed. So we just started feeding them as much as we could, and still ongoing. And that's when I learned about animal environmental rights and disasters as well, because I was part of it. And in the middle, there was this one beautiful thing that we started were carbon neutral clean water projects. And these were for both humans and animals, something very new. And when those things happened, when animals and humans interacted while they were getting water, I wanted them to realize that their children had the same needs as animals. So it was kind of a DEI perspective on things because we didn't tell them what to do. It was just happening. And eventually that one project multiplied and we have 1,600 of those across the country. And that's just one of our projects. And in 2022, there was another.
For our listeners, tell me what you guys do in that organization so our listeners can kind of visualize what that looks like. Starting with clean water.
So Charity Drinks Foundation, our theory of change is interspecies justice. And this is something that has evolved through my life. But what it simply means is that we aim to create a better world for all life, for humans, animals, and the environment from an interspecies justice perspective. So what that means is when we interact with another life form or a living being, we acknowledge that they have their inherent rights, no matter who may they be. So when that interaction happens, in those situations, you cannot balance away the rights of one versus the other. I know it's a really hard approach, but I think everybody deserves the chance to thrive. And without the animals and environment thriving, humans cannot thrive as well. But the same is not true for the animals and the environment, which is interesting. But that's what we do, and we make sure that all of these interests are aligned. So we work in various fields. One of them is, of course, water. Clean water is an essential right of a lot of people, and that's not being met, unfortunately, in my country. So we installed these carbon neutral clean water projects, making sure that it's environmental friendly and therefore both humans and animals. And recently, this year, we basically extended that same water to create these beautiful green vegetable gardens. And we have built gardens in the middle of deserts as well. So that solves problems of food security too. And one of these green vegetable gardens supports 40 families a year, and one family at least has 10 people. And we're hopefully going to extend that across the country because we have already installed over 1,600 of these clean water projects that possibly help millions of humans and animals every year. That's one project. Then, of course, we work in disaster welfare. And in the start of this year, we basically created this amazing facility called the Disaster Zone Farm Animal Shelter in Pakistan. So the idea is to acknowledge that animals can be victims of disasters because they didn't cause them. And countries like mine, even the US, except companion animals, they don't have any protections for animals in disasters. And that's true for across the world. So this facility is the first farm animal shelter and the first disaster zone farm animal shelter in the world, actually. Farm animal shelter for my country, but the idea for the world is very new. And that's the same thing we do for humans as well. So we get them the essential facilities. This is something I've learned from my experience. Women are actually the most important person or beings, in the cases of disaster. Because in Pakistan, they're primarily responsible for the animals, for the children, for the elderly, and they have an understanding of how things work. So without them, you cannot actually make any disaster, protection plan. So they're major stakeholders, and we make sure that they're part of it, and we learn from them, and that's how we find solutions. The water projects also help women a lot because in a patriarchal country like Pakistan, which I do not want to deny, women have to walk miles just to get unclean drinking water. So now we install these within their homes, outside their villages, so the problem gets solved as well. And in cases of disasters, we have these specific medical camps just for women because we understand women needs are much different, and when childbirth or anything else is involved, so we make sure that all of those facilities are available. This is just from over the top. Of course, on the ground, it's much more comprehensive. Then we work extensively in the health sector. We have a very large-scale health laboratory in a very underprivileged area in Balochistan in Pakistan, which is the most vulnerable province in our country, and it offers free medical testing for anybody in the community. And we have around 1,100 tests available as well, while the government, normally charges. So that's really important. We're also working on solving the problem of diabetes. So we have a campaign that works across the country where we go and find children who need this, because in a country where education is, not that much prevalent, these children don't know that, insulin for them is like oxygen. They would die if they don't get it. So that's one of our projects. And then, of course, we do lots of food delivery. Now it's plant-based only because we felt, and there's science available that, eating other products creates a lot of environmental footprint. And given we had already suffered from a very major disaster, I just felt that it would be more appropriate to not cause the same problem again and again. I know it also keeps the animals out of this equation as well, but it's also about the environmental footprint. And that was a more interspecies justice-related initiative that we started. And it's been going on for quite a few years. There are a lot more. I don't want to confuse people.
I'm blown away by the fact that you're 29, okay, and that you've been able to accomplish, and I'm sure you see it as an accomplishment. I would think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but also, like you said, just a part of your passion. And I think that's amazing. I do want to ask though, because I consider myself to be an empathy activist, right? I want people to be more empathetic. I can feel your heart through the screen. And I'm sure that you have seen things that have taken a toll on you. How do you replenish yourself? How do you make sure that you stay strong for all of the projects and the works that you're doing?
There's one other person who is, directly responsible for all of this. So So I have a co-founder with me. His name is Ahmed Malik, and he's actually not my real brother, but in essence, we are brothers, and that we work together in everything. So none of this would be possible without him. But in terms of empathy and finding a safe space, I actually don't have a good answer, but I have a lot of amazing people to talk to support with. I'm actually part of this amazing BIPOC Animal Wellbeing Collective, which you might know of. And despite not being from the US, we miraculously met at the HSUS Expo last year. And we met again this year, and now we are working on creating this safe space. And I'm actually part of the steering committee, but I should, do more work. But it's a very safe space. So normally when I'm, sad or angry, I just go there and talk to people. But other than that, I just talk to my cat. She helps me a lot.
Right. Tell me your cat's name again.
Her name is Mao, and the reason for that is we didn't want to be too less creative. So Meow was already taken, too unoriginal. So we stick with Mao.
I love that. Okay, this is very groundbreaking, and I'm sure the listeners and those that are watching also would agree. This interspecies justice is definitely getting more attention and is being spoke about more and more on a global perspective. But for you, I still believe that this remains kind of a niche area of activism. What are some of the challenges that you face when trying to push for animal welfare in a country where other societal issues take priority?
So I think there's no reason to fight, how the way things are happening. You just have to be kind enough to talk to people and explain your perspective. And so normally what we do is that's why we do interspecies justice work, because, if we only did animal rights work, our work may not have, succeeded or transpired into something impactful. So we make sure whenever we do anything, all of concerns of everybody are, incorporated. That's why human, animal, and environmental rights has to come together. And that is also another reason why I have a separate master's in each of these disciplines. It just happened. I did not plan it. So we make sure that all of those values are always there. So for example, if you're going to do a food drive, we would prefer plant-based because it solves the problem of food security as well. It's more healthy too, but it also keeps the animals out of the equation. And you cannot force anybody, to just go vegan, for example, or stuff like that. It's a process. It's a decision that people take on their own, but you have to create that safe space first. Because if a stranger goes and talk to you, hey, this is how I think about the world, they will probably never listen to you. So you have to become their friend first.
Right.
And that's what we normally do wherever we go. And in our own organizational work, we've been working in many areas for over 8 years now. So those communities know us, they understand us, where they're coming from. And that's why whenever we do anything, we always incorporate what they need first. And then we see how can we make this firstly carbon neutral, because that's really important. How do we make sure animal welfare is respected and at the same time their needs are met?
Yeah.
Just one example, a tiny example. Just want to give a tiny example to you. Just one, very, very small one. So when these disasters happened in 2022 in the floods, so instead of making those, traditional houses that we see outside, we did not do that. We made indigenous housing that was already something people already lived with. We would always give what the people are more comfortable with, no matter what, because it's about them and not about us. That's also a core theme of interspecies justice.
And so many organizations can learn from just that main point that you said. Two things you said. One is building trust. And not only are you building trust, you mentioned the amount of time that it takes to sometimes build trust with people. You have to be their friends, right? Or there has to be this level of safe space for them as well. And then you can start, with the education and, other viewpoints when the community has your trust. So I think that's amazing. The other thing that you said is you're asking them what they need. What do you need? Not what I think you need, right? And I think that that's another huge thing when people talk about community engagement. It is, we think you need this, so we're going to come in and give you these vaccines or build these houses that you don't want or that you're not comfortable in. So I commend you for that as well. Did you always love animals? Tell me a little bit about your early life. Altamush as a child.
Well, I did love animals. I had quite a few stray companion animals. I avoid the term stray because it implies, they're not part of the ecosystem. So I use community animals. So I had community animals with me when I was very young, maybe 10 to 13. So lots of cats came in and we used to live with them, and I made them friends as well. Normally community cats fight a lot. I had that, and that had a very big, influence on my life. But of course, I did not see animals the way I see them now. It was very different because coming from an Islamic country, and this is where the religion comes in, and it's also all part of our constitution as well. So that's how almost always everybody thinks. Meat is actually a very big part of our culture. So we never actually saw farm animals the way I see them now. So it was kind of, impossible to think from that perspective initially. And of course, we had other festivals, like, for example, the Eid that just came away. And of course, we celebrate as well. We just do it a bit differently. It's the essence of Eid is, of course, something very different than what's, discussed across the world. So a lot of people say it's just about, slaughtering. But the thing is, it's the main idea was that there was a prophet and he had his son, and he was commanded by God to slaughter his son essentially to show how much he, loved God. Of course, at the end, the son was spared, but he was spared with an animal. But the essential idea was that you have to sacrifice something that's so close to you that you're basically giving up part of yourself to show how much you love God. That was the idea. Now it's something different. Now it's just about buying an animal on the last couple of days and then slaughtering it. So everybody has lost the essence. And there's a lot of other good things that we can do. For example, instead of slaughtering, we can help a child go to school. You can build something, build a water project, stuff like that. Give away food. There's a lot of different ways to do that because that's not the essence of giving up who you are. And that's something that's lost unfortunately in the religion.
Yeah. So this is something that you're actually educating Islamic people on, right? And advocating for and giving them more knowledge about. Are you advocating for veganism from an Islamic perspective? Are you vegan?
Yeah, I am a vegan. I'm a Muslim as well. So I have a lot of identities, but those are the two main ones. And for the last couple of years through this work, I've presented a lot on this topic of how this can be compatible. And I've met a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I've met the right people who are Muslim vegans like myself. And I work with them for advocating for this. So the thing is, veganism is not just, not eat animals. It's an idea of extending empathy and mercy of God to all beings. So the thing is, in Islam, it is allowed that you can eat animals, but it's never written anywhere that you have to, which makes the whole concept very aligned. However, there are other principles, if we talk about, that further solidify the need for veganism in the religion as well. But of course, it's a person's choice. You cannot force them. And so the religion is full of it. And I'm working on a book which is hopefully going to be approved in a month or so. So in a year, you'll have the first of its kind book in the world that explains veganism, animal rights in Islam. And I'm co-editing and writing it with a lot of other people. So I can't share more details, but it's going to come out. In Pakistan, as part of our work, we also do establish mosques. So mosques are basically Islamic, preaching sites or religious sites where people come to pray. So we've built over 9 of these so far in Pakistan through our nonprofit. And now we're working with the leaders there on educating them on how they can better align animal welfare with their principles. Because when these leaders speak with the public, their message goes far and wide. Nobody questions it. They would question my perspective, but never theirs. So it's also important to involve the actual experts as well, and that's what we're trying to do. A very big part of my work I completely missed out, so I'm going to go there later.
Okay, the part that I know when we spoke, you told me something fascinating about leadership, your leadership philosophy, so you're actually meeting with the experts, acknowledging that maybe you don't have the, trust with individuals or your voice doesn't go as wide. You can get your voice and your message to go wide and far through the leaders in the community. What is your leadership philosophy about creating better leaders than yourself? What does that look? And tell me more about that.
So I'm glad you remembered this. Yeah. So my own leadership philosophy has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years because I was blessed to meet these amazing people. So true leadership is something, that's completely devoid of insecurity. It's about imagining a world where you're under the ground essentially. And that's what's going to happen with the most of us. And you have to make sure that the work keeps on going. So basically you are not there anymore, but your work is happening. That's leadership for me. Mm-hmm. And that's only possible if you create better versions than yourself even, because the world is going to need better people than myself. And that's what I believe. And we should share everything with them. Of course, we need to see if they're trustworthy or not, or empathetic or not, because I think those qualities are something you just are born with. I'm still trying to figure out what's the source of empathy and patience and trust, because that is, if somebody has that, they can be the best leader in the world no matter what, because you can teach them. It's okay if they're not competent enough on day one, but it's not okay if they're not compassionate enough to understand why we are doing this whole thing. So that's how it's changing, and it keeps on changing. So you find good people and then you bring out the leaders in them and also train them on how to be better than you, right? That is incredible. You're organizing Pakistan's first animal and environmental rights conference. Yeah. That's a huge step. Tell us about that. So this is actually linked to my main work actually. So in addition to the nonprofit, I also run my country's first ever animal and environmental law firm. So I'm a lawyer by profession and I'm an educator. So I teach animal and environmental law at university. I had a class today as well. So that was a few things that I may have missed, informing you. So that's another basic thing I'm trying to develop in Pakistan. So we offer free animal legal aid. Another one of our projects project is legal education. And so we were able to convince this university. And so I'm teaching my second ever course ever at a university. And the first one was animal law advocacy, which went really well. And right now I'm teaching international animal law, international environmental law, and international disaster law under public international law to around 60 students right now. And it's going really well. Today was just week one. And in addition to that, we do a lot of education with other institutions. Thank you. It's these are all firsts, and I don't want to call them first anymore. I feel sad, but it is the way it is. And we also work with lots of other nonprofits delivering free sessions here and there. I had one today in the evening as well, and I make sure that there's always one happening every week because this education has to go out. And as a part of it, we felt that we need to create a movement, a space where dialogues about animal and environmental rights can happen on the national scale. And that's why we decided last year, actually this year, to have a conference. It was a big step because, funding and all, but we've got the funding. I'm happy to share that. And on January 18th and 19th next year, we're hosting a very big conference of around 200 to 250 people with a lot of experts, people from the Supreme Court of Pakistan, international speakers from the Plant-Based Treaty, Chef Dave from Malaysia, if you know about him, he's very famous in the space, a few speakers from Japan as well, a few from Canada, representing major organizations. I'm just finalizing stuff. So it's going to open a lot of national dialogue and also train these experts themselves as well in Pakistan to think about animal and environmental rights. And so it will help create a movement as well because the audience would mostly be students and other people who are already in the movement but do not see a way how to connect with the outside world. This also puts Pakistan on the global animal rights map as well, something that's been missing and is very crucial because, we have all these animals as well in the environment and they need to be recognized. And that's the first step to showcasing empathy and everything. Because if somebody is invisible to you, how do you see them? It's not possible, right?
Wow. So you are putting Pakistan on the map in this field, right, of animal activism. And people have biases and stereotypes about Muslims or those from Pakistan. What is a stereotype or, one that maybe you wish more people would challenge or something that you want people to know about Muslims or Pakistanians?
So I think one of the stereotypes I've actually felt, which I personally went through, was that normally people think, because of the lack of education and perhaps poverty as well in the economic situation, people in Pakistan generally are never, trained enough to understand and use modern equipment, for example, even in housing or when they travel or to the US or something like that. So I personally felt that with a few people. Of course, it was really bad, but that's actually not the case because education is, continuously rising, at least in the the developed cities in Pakistan where I'm from. It is still a massive problem. And I would never deny that, but it's definitely not the case. And, we should not generalize people where they're coming from. And secondly, about Muslims, I think there's a lot of connection between, fear and war and stuff like that, which is actually also not true because at the heart of it, everything that I've said to you aligns directly with Islam. And right now, my book is going to, push that out on paper so people can make that connection. Everything, every word that I've mentioned right now, it's part of the religion. So I think I could not advocate that better. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think media, portrays and then social media, what they want us to believe. But like you said, it's so aligned with the teachings of Islam. And you might not know this, but I actually took my Shahada when I was 16. So I appreciate so many aspects of the Islamic religion. It's definitely one that I respect and definitely things that I still use to date ingrained in how I live my life. So 100%. Amazing. Altamush, before we close, I do want to say that you have won multiple awards for your work, including recognition from the Humane Society of the United States several times. What has been the most rewarding part of your journey so far? Wow. I think it's what I'm going to do tomorrow, probably. That's the most rewarding part, what comes next. And even what though because I generally think that, even if I am probably the most unworthy person to do all of this, and I believe it because, this work is so beyond me and I'm not like, how the hell did I get into this? I didn't do anything. And I'm still being, used and made part of this amazing process where I'm touching lives, not just humans and animals, but the environment and the way I think. I don't think it's mine actually. And I'm just so grateful for it. So I think that's the best part. And by what comes next is basically where I'm going to be used, more in the future and doing more amazing things like the conference, making films, for example, teaching, and all of it. That's, I think, the most best part of it.
Yeah, that is incredible. I have so many more questions for you that I think we could have a whole part 2 and a part 3 of your journey, your life, your beliefs, what you want to teach others. I know you are doing incredible things, and I'm super grateful to just be having this conversation with you. I have learned so much in this conversation, and so I definitely appreciate it. Final question. If there was one thing you would want the audience to know or take away with them today, just one thing, what would it be?
So it's a quote actually, and I shared this when I got the HSUS award this year as well. So it goes like this: We only have one life to make a difference. Do it today. They only have one life to feel the difference. Do it today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And shout out to the BIPOC and Animal Welfare Collective for connecting us, because I would not know you if it wasn't for that group where we do find a safe space to talk about all of our animal welfare frustrations and loves and joys and successes. But thank you so much, Altamush, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for the audience listeners. Thank you for joining us on Critters and Cultures, where we explore the deep connections between humans, animals, and the world around us. Remember, every person has a story, every creature has a story, and every culture has its wisdom. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep discovering the wonders of our shared world. Thank you.